Thank you to our senior adult choir for leading us in our special music this morning. And let me also add a special thank you to all of our senior adults from our church for all that you've done in the past, all that you continue to do, and what you'll do in the future. Let me conclude our weekend of senior adult recognition by continuing on with our entertainment last night and just say a simple thank you. Thank you very much. We got to have Elvis with us last night. You know, there are certain age levels that, to be honest with you this morning, there are some really significant things that happened in my life at certain age levels. And you may not think about it as young people today, but once you get older, and I found out this morning for our children's story, I'm old, you know, I'm 54, so there are some things that as I look back, really had some significant events. For example, when I was 6 years old, I started school by going to the first grade. We didn't have kindergarten. Much like Jeff Hensley, our Bible speaker, spoke about, didn't have kindergarten, so we attended the first year of school in the first grade. When I turned 14, I started driver's education with a classroom full of football players and an assistant football coach who didn't really care to learn that much as just get their driver's license, and it scared me being in class with them. When I turned 16, I did get my driver's license on the first try, thank you very much. When I turned 18, I started college at Isothermal Community College. At 23, I got married. Pretty young. At 23, I got married. At 24, we had our first child. At age 36, I pastored my first church. Then at age 42, I became pastor of Mountain Creek Baptist Church. And at age 50, I got my first letter and invitation from the AARP. There you go. And I get one every year. From here on, I'll get one until I join the AARP. A lot of significant events take place in our lives. And as we look back at different ages that we can see those events take place, maybe it's good to kind of look back from time to time and say, what happened at this age and that age? What did God do for me? Now, some of you may have seen these two television shows that I want to mention this morning. The shows had an interesting theme with them, an interesting, I guess it was a plot, or however you want to look at it, storyline. The main actor of the show was a young person doing a job that was really the job that an adult should be doing. The first show that I used to watch is a fun show to watch. It's a show by the name of Doogie Howser. You remember that show? Now, Doogie Howser was played by Neil Patrick Harris, and he was supposed to be a prodigy who graduated college at 13, became a full-time doctor at 14, and the show followed the day of the young doctor, complete with struggles of a middle schooler, then high schooler that he would have. The struggles of balancing a girlfriend and his best friend relationships. It was a good show. It was a fun show. It was a light show. It was a show I enjoyed watching. However, I had to watch it knowing that a 14-year-old would probably never be a doctor. At least one that worked on me. Another show I used to watch is a movie. It's entitled Little Big League. I don't know if you've ever seen this movie. Little Big League. And in this movie, a boy, once again, age 13, inherits a Major League Baseball team and becomes owner of the Minnesota Twins when his grandfather, who was the owner, dies and leaves him the team. And so here's this 13-year-old. They follow his life as he is owning a baseball team, and the movie follows his struggles. And one of the lines that's in that movie is, his name was Billy. And Billy was the owner, and then Billy got upset at how his team was playing, and Billy fired his coach. And Billy took over the team, managing the team. And Billy began managing, and one day there was a call that went against the team, and Billy got upset. Now, he's only 13. And Billy said some words he shouldn't have to the umpire. And Billy got thrown out of the game. And the umpire in the middle of the game walked over to his mother. And his mother said, "Why'd you throw him out of the game?" And he whispered to his mother what he said. And his mother got on Billy and grounded him from being the manager. And Billy in his press conference said, "This isn't right. Billy's got to be Billy. You can't keep Billy from being Billy." And he said, as a matter of fact, I no longer want to be called Billy, I want to be called Bill at 13 years old. You know, the fact of the matter is this. There are some things that are meant for adults to do. I don't want a 14-year-old doctor performing surgery on me no matter how well he did in school. You know, I think about my son who's 14, and I think, absolutely not. You know, I'm sure a 14-year-old would not know the ins and outs of owning a car, much less a baseball team. Some things adults are meant to do, not because I don't think a person can do it at a certain age, but I just believe we're mentally prepared to do certain things at certain years of our lives. And this morning, we are celebrating senior adults, and this is a day set aside to pay tribute to those who have been the foundation, who have been the strength of not just this church, but the faith that we celebrate as Christians. I mean, you go throughout all the churches around here, and one thing is for certain, there are senior adults who have been the strength and the foundation of those churches. So we do say thank you to our senior adults this morning. And this morning we are talking about something that no matter what age you are, you can do. No matter what age you are, you can do what we're going to talk about this morning. If you have your Bibles, I would remind you to turn back with me to the book of Romans. Edith read it earlier for us, Romans chapter 12. Looking at verses 1 and 2. And in this, I want us to see three things that we are called to do, no matter how old we are, no matter how young we are, no matter what we do in life, no matter who we are in life. God calls us to do these three things no matter our age. The first thing God calls us to do is to understand that how we live, how we act, how we deal with people, how we go about our daily lives is not about what we want to do. Instead, it should be about our understanding of what God did for us. Notice it says in verse 1, it says, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy. That word mercy means compassion and forgiveness shown from someone who has the power to punish us. Pretty strong definition. But young people, if you think about your parents, you can think about the fact that unless you're 19 years old, or maybe 18 years old, they have the ability to punish you as they see fit, as long as it's not abusive. I mean, you say, well, that's not right. Billy's got to be Billy. No, that's not the point. The point is, God has given parents the responsibility to do those things, to raise you, to train you, to try to get you to live the way God would have you live. And sometimes that does take the form of discipline. And when we look at it as Christians, we serve a God who has every right in His power to punish us and to discipline us. You know, this is what God did for us. We're told in Romans that because we are sinners, there's a payment for our sins that has to be made. And that payment is spiritual death. Eternal separation from God. That is the payment for sin. That is the wages of sin that has to be paid. However, we're also told in the book of Romans that God had mercy on us. Even while we were yet sinners, He had mercy on us to the point of giving up His only Son to die for our sins. We know this. We read about this. I preach about this a lot. Still, it is important for us to remember that it is because of His mercy that we are to live in a certain way. A way that pleases God. Because of His mercy, because He had compassion on us, we should offer our bodies as a living sacrifice, as it says here in our passage of Scripture. Now, there's a key word in this part of the passage that's very important for us to remember and to recognize this morning. It says right here, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. That key word that we see in this passage is offer. You see, God's going to never ever force us to live for Him. God will never force us to follow Him. God will never make us make our lives a living sacrifice for Him. However, He does want us to notice that because He sacrificed His Son, as a result, we should want to sacrifice our lives for Him. Now, the sacrifice that is mentioned in Romans is a sacrifice that will more than likely not result in us dying as Christ died on the cross. His sacrifice was on the cross. Our sacrifice is a living sacrifice. It may not be physically dying for Christ, but it's mentally, spiritually giving up ourselves to serve Him, to follow Him, to obey Him, to do what He wants us to do with our lives. It's a living sacrifice. It's us saying to ourselves or saying to God that we want to give up selfishness, that we want to give up our will, that we want to give up pride. All these things should be dying to Christ. It should be our living sacrifice. So let me ask you this morning, no matter what age you are, what is something you can sacrifice for the sake of Christ living within you? What is something that you are doing? What is something you are saying? What's a way you are acting that you can give up to God as a living sacrifice to Him? What are some things we can say to God? I am doing these things because of selfishness. I am doing these things because of pride. I am doing this thing because I'm human. And God, what I want to do today is I want to offer these things up to you as a sacrifice so you can take them and then I can give my life to you wholly, completely. And as David says, you can create in me a clean heart, O God, so that I can serve you to the best of our ability. But the only way we can do that is to totally give ourselves as a living sacrifice to God. So the first thing we're told to do, no matter our age, is to realize that we are to live for Christ because of His mercy for us. Now the second thing we're told to do, no matter how old or how young we are, is we are to make sure we do not let the world determine how we live. Paul says it this way in verse 2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world. The word pattern is interesting. A pattern is an idea that is laid out as to how something is supposed to look when you're through with it. Did you get that? A pattern is an idea of something that's laid out, how it's supposed to look when you're through with it. An architect will draw up designs or patterns for how a building will look when that building is finished being built. A person who does landscape work will design a pattern as to how yard work or ground work is supposed to look when it's finished. In Pinehurst at the hospital where I work part-time, there's a landscape company that is putting in new flowers in front of the hospital. I thought the old ones looked really pretty, but they're taking those out. They're putting new flowers in, and one day I saw one of the owners of the landscape company walking around. He had this huge sheet of paper, and he was looking, and he was walking in that area where they were going to put new flowers, and he was spray painting in that area, and I can only imagine that he was spray painting where certain flowers were supposed to be as he looked at that pattern in his hands. You see, there's a pattern that we are supposed to live by. And Paul is telling the church at Rome and telling us as well, that pattern should not be determined by this world, but the pattern should be determined by God. We should not want to follow how the world tells us we should live, but we should follow how God and His Word tells us we should live. You know, people have often asked me, why do people not live for God the way they used to? Why do people not take Christianity seriously like they used to? Why do people not attend church more like they used to? Well, I can give you the answer to that question. You see, I went to 4 years of college. I went to 3 years of seminary. I graduated with a master's degree, so I can give you that answer. I'm qualified. And here's the answer. Because they don't want to. You say, you went to 4 years of college, 3 years of seminary, and you've preached all these years to give me the answer that they don't want to. No, that's what the Bible says. The Bible simply tells us not to conform to the pattern of this world, but it says this, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Folks, in other words, if people want to go to church, they will. If people want to read God's Word, they will. If people want to call people up who are out of church to see if they're okay, they will. But if they don't want to, they won't. It's just simple as that. And what God tells us in His Word is this. If we want to do those things, we have to change the way we think. We have to think differently. We have to renew our minds. We have to put our mindset on Jesus Christ. We have to see people as creations of God. But that's a mind thing. That's not something that just happens. You know, I love sports. And I think it's an amazing thing to see a coach be able to get out of players what they want to get out of players. You know, you can work with players, you can practice with players, you can have the best players possible. You know, you can have 5-star athletes that come from high school, and they're these what they're called one and dones. They can go to school 1 year just to say they went 1 year and then go to MBA or whatever. They're called one and dones. You can have the best player possible, but if they don't want to play, they ain't going to play. Period. And you know, we can be the best Christians in our hearts. We can have the best intentions. We can think in our minds that we're the best, but if we don't want to do something, we're not going to do it. According to God's Word. And God simply tells us this. No matter what age we are, no matter whether we're young, no matter whether we're old, we need to put in our minds that we want to live for God. Because once we want to do it, we will indeed do it. There's one thing I've learned over my years of ministry. It's that God will never force us to do something we don't want to do. Now, He may call us to do something He wants us to do, but He will never force us to do something we don't want to do. We will miss the blessings that He has for us if we don't do it. But we have to want to serve God. We have to renew our minds. We have to live for Him. We have to be transformed in our minds. Then it says at the end, then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is. His good, pleasing, and perfect will. You see, it doesn't matter how old we are. It doesn't matter what age we are. We can be 8, 9, 10, 50, 80, 100. We can be older than that. We can be the age of Methuselah. But the question we have to ask is this. No matter how old I am, no matter how young I am, do I want to serve God the way He wants me to? Do I want to live for God the way He wants me to? Paul tells us in our passage for this morning that we should want to serve God. We should want to live for God. We should want to submit ourselves to God, not because it's something we want to do, but it's something we do because of His mercy on us. You see, folks, none of us deserve to be here today. None of us deserve to be celebrating Senior Adult Sunday on a beautiful day that He's created in a beautiful building. But that's God's mercy. And because He loves us so much, and because He had mercy on us, even while we were sinners, that should motivate us to simply say, I want to serve God. I want to live for God. because He died for me, I want to live for Him. Are you willing to do that today? Are you willing to submit your life to Jesus Christ, no matter what age you are? Would you pray with me, please?